Bills Mafia, what's going on? Welcome to Buffalo Late Night. Tonight we're going to be talking about the AFC East and how things are going to shake out. Let's get into it. Bills Mafia, what is going on? Welcome to Buffalo Late Night. How are we doing tonight? Obviously, I'm glad this is Thursday. It's a little weird. I understand. You can make your comments. It is not late night. It is 7 p.m. I totally understand. We're working with it. And unfortunately, there's a lot of things that go on at 7 p.m. But at least I'm ahead of, Thursday Night Football. So here we are. That being said, welcome to Buffalo Late Night here on the Cover One Sports Network. I am incredibly glad that you've joined us. We have a jam-packed show for you. I am your host, Thomas DeLoss. I don't know what else you're doing tonight besides watching Josh Allen and his thighs on the Buffalo Bills Sports Network, but this is way better anyway. Again, thank you for tuning in tonight, or if you're listening on Spotify, happy Friday to you. You can find our show free on all social media and streaming platforms, including Spotify and YouTube. If you're watching right now on Twitter, hop on over to YouTube. Come join the conversation. We would love to have you. Also, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. We'll let you know every single time one of our Cover One shows is going live. You know, right now we're ramping up. We got some fantastic content that's being delivered every single day, whether it's the Greg Thompson Sports Show, whether it's Under Review, whether it's the Film Room, or any one of the amazing content or shows that we have here on Cover One. Make sure you are tuning in. Also, Super Chats are live, so if you want to join the conversation, hit that button and join us. Now, I do have some fantastic news, and it is going to be winding up real quickly. I'm giving away a copy of Madden 24 with Josh Allen on the front. Go find that right on my Twitter. You'll see that right there. Guys, we are literally 1 week away from the first NFL game of the season. And on top of that, we are just a quick 11 days away from the Bills' first game of the season against the New York Jets. Make sure you're subscribing to Cover One Pass. Make sure you are getting all the best coverage and analysis straight from us here at Cover One. Now, guys, we got some fantastic guests for you tonight. Two fantastic people. The first, the host of the Under Review on the Cover One Sports Network, Mr. Joe DeRosa, and the AFC East reporter for Fox Sports, Mr. Henry McKenna. Guys, what's going on tonight?
What's going on, Thomas? Thanks for having me.
Hey, good to be here.
I'm glad you guys were able to hop in and join us. Obviously, we're going to be talking about all things AFC East tonight. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of news, a lot of headlines, a lot of juice, whether it's the Jonathan Taylor stuff or the Christian Wilkins stuff or whatever stuff's going on. The AFC East never seems to disappoint. But that being said, before we get too deep into that stuff, we are going to hear from Aaron Quinn. We are going to hear from Greg Thompson.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
Guys, just like they said, does not disappoint. You get some fantastic content, a lot of inside analysis, a lot of stuff that you'll know before the general public. Eric Turner has been dropping some nuggets of pretty incredible information and breaking some pretty big news, and that will continue, I promise. That being said, let's get into tonight's weekly segment, affectionately known as Damn.
Damn!
This week's Damn Award recipient is presented to the Cardinals owner, Michael Bidwell, and former Cardinals GM, Steve Keim. In 2018, Mr. Keim was arrested for DWI, blowing a .19 and causing the Cardinals to suspend him from all NFL team-related activities and communication for 5 weeks to prevent the NFL from imposing any additional punishments. This is old news. I get it. 5 years. But it turns out that this is not over. And apparently they only sort of punished him. In all reality, the Cardinals gave former head coach Steve Wilks a burner phone to communicate with Keim while he was suspended. And Keim spent these 5 weeks structuring a deal for former Cardinals tailback David Johnson to be paid $40 million, which turns out to be one of the worst extensions in NFL history, as Johnson's level of play dropped dramatically after this extension was inked. As for now, the investigation remains ongoing, but there are rumors that the Cardinals could be forfeiting draft picks. Regardless, we'll be watching with bated breath to see what comes of this trial and jointly award Michael Bidwell and Steve Keim this week's Damn Trophy. Gentlemen, amazing stuff, right?
Sir, that's one word, definitely. Listen, David Johnson, if you were a fantasy owner of David Johnson back then, you probably would have went through great lengths to retain him on your team if there was any risk of him leaving. So it seemed like a good deal at the time, but it wasn't.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation. I don't really know exactly how to elaborate on such a ridiculous situation in and of itself. But needless to say, let's get into it. We have a ton of stuff to talk about tonight. Henry, obviously, as the AFC East reporter, you've been seeing everything that's going on. What is your kind of high-level overview of right now before we get into the meat and potatoes of the AFC East? Have you seen it?
Yeah, I mean, it's 4 good teams, 3 really, really good teams, and 4 good teams in the AFC East. It's probably the most competitive division in the NFL. And, you know, you can argue, I think every AFC East team, except for the Patriots, kind of feels like they're not getting talked about enough. Like the fan bases, at least, where, you know, Bills Mafia is probably feeling like, oh, there's too much talk about the Jets. The Dolphins are definitely feeling like they're underappreciated because nobody's picking them to win the division, and they might be the most talented team, strictly speaking. So it is, every single one of these teams has its own special sauce right now, whether it's Bill Belichick, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, or Tyreek Hill, or, you know, just a smattering of like absurdly talented people in Miami. So I don't think I've been this excited to see how a division shakes out. Maybe ever as a sort of football interested person.
Now, Henry, let's start about the first team, the team that I think that most people probably perceive is going to be the weakest of the 4 teams. That's going to be the New England Patriots. We saw this past week they had allowed Bailey Zappi to be released, and they brought him back. They've also brought in a litany of other talented people this offseason. And Joe, let's kind of just discuss, what are the thoughts on the New England Patriots, and have they done enough this offseason potentially to even
special guest?
Sure. Yeah. Happy to jump in. So I think when you go to see what has changed the most in New England, you have to think of Bill O'Brien. That's the biggest difference. And with him came a few tweaks, I would say, offensively. So like Juju Smith-Schuster comes in as a free agent and replaces Jacoby Myers. And I think in theory, like best case scenario, he upgrades the slot position. I think it was probably the biggest risk that they took all offseason, because you have a guy that works in Jacoby Myers in the offense that Mac Jones really likes throwing to, whether it was the Patricia offense or the McDaniels offense. And they got rid of him because they thought Juju could be better. Juju's clearly got a knee problem. It's been lingering. And I don't think he looks very explosive. So maybe he'll get volume in this offense, but I am already sort of thinking about Boston Sports Radio. You guys might not know much of its reputation, but they look at it the most negative thing that they could possibly think of. That is, I think, going to be a fast storyline if Juju Smith-Schuster can't put up respectable or even reasonable numbers. Quickly, people will be feeling like Belichick should have just paid $1 million a year, $2 million a year more for Jacoby Myers and retained him. But yeah, I think bigger picture, without getting in the weeds, I'm talking about like little differences potentially on a team in a division that really made very big changes over the last 3 years with Josh Allen taking a massive leap forward in his development and just completely changing the dynamic of the division as a whole. And then, Mike McDaniel coming in and changing that offense with Tyreek Hill. And then finally, Aaron Rodgers arriving in New York, along with that 2022 draft class that won the offensive and defensive rookie of the year. We've seen these huge momentum shifts around those three other teams. And all that we've really seen Belichick do is become cool and collected. But that flat line has led them to be 25-25 since Tom Brady left. So, Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I can't agree more with that idea that it's kind of the outlook is kind of middling. And even though I don't listen to Boston Sports Radio, I've heard plenty of outtakes. I could definitely agree that they will not be a positive environment. But one thing that I think really stymies the Patriots this season, because there's talent on the roster. They have one of the best secondaries in the league with a budding potential really, really good pickup in Christian Gonzalez to go with a really good safety room, a couple of really solid bets.
Marte Mapu, who's been flashing, high level right now.
Keon White on the defensive line. I mean, there's a lot of talent on the New England Patriots defense, and even offensively, bringing in Gesicki to shore up your two tight end sets and have a nice little slot option in case Juju goes down. But where I think they get messed up is, again, you got to depend on the health of Juju to keep the slot production going. You have to rely on a litany of slot receivers, but can they make explosive plays happen? Are you expecting Devontae Parker to really be that guy for you where you can depend on him to go down the field often? Because the thing that I've said about the Patriots is they feel like a team that can try to give you paper cuts, but can never kind of put you away. So teams might play to that. But what really gets them, and something that took me by shock when it came out, they have the hardest strength of schedule in the league. They're number 32. They have to play the same division that the Bills do, yet they seem to have the tougher break. And when you look at the Patriots of the past couple of years, their schedule hasn't been too brutal, especially the year where they kind of surged with Mac Jones. So I think the team could win games that, people might not think they'll win. I think 8-9 wins is definitely something that could happen. But when you talk about this division, what they have to deal with, and looking at the talent parallel to them in the AFC East, I just don't see it being something realistic.
Yeah, and the one thing that we all have to keep in mind is that with the expectation of Bill O'Brien and what Bill O'Brien did with Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins, it can't be understated. They were very, very good. They were a perennial playoff team in Houston. And the other part about that with Joe Judge and Matt Patricia as the offensive coordinator, they did Mac Jones no favors. Whatsoever. And quite frankly, the team was devoid of talent. They've got Ezekiel Elliott that they brought in, whether he still has much in the tank or not. He's still an added element to Ramondre Stevenson after they obviously lost Damian Harris. And just they have a litany of talented options as well as a talented defense. But like you guys have said, the Patriots are truly the question of, can they get over the hump? Because we know what limitations Mac has. We've seen it. They put it on paper, and unfortunately, they made it quite transparent that when the weather gets rough, Mac Jones just doesn't have the arm strength to be able to thread it into the wind, or even if the weather gets dicey, that you can rely on him to get you through a game at all cost. It's not the same with Josh Allen, whereas Josh Allen, though they lost in that game, so you can chirp me, Patriots fans, it's fine. He still has the ability. He still has the moxie and the strength to be able to play in bad weather games. The big question is can they do it? And like you guys have said, right now in the AFC East, there are three ultra competitive teams. Obviously, the Jets are a question mark with Aaron Rodgers. Tua Tagovailoa is whether or not he can actually stay healthy. But if all those things happen alongside a Bills team, which has not only pretty much returned every, high level player they've added in, they have to now, the Patriots have to play up to those teams, not just survive. And I think that's the big question is, can Bill Belichick post Tom Brady, which he has proven yet to be able to be successful, be able to do anything? Because it's not just him being able to stay above, because when Tom Brady and the Patriots were good, there wasn't really, outside of a Rex Ryan and Mark Sanchez-led Jets team, much of anything in the AFC East. It was 3 bottom-of-the-barrel teams. So I think the real question is there more in the tank for the Patriots at this point, or is it well wishes? Because it seems like they have some nice pieces, right? We've seen Mike Gesicki is an unbelievable tight end in terms of being able to catch the ball, not a blocker. And then they have a bunch of different guys. Christian Barmore, like you mentioned, Christian Gonzalez, Kyle Duggar is a really nice piece on the back end. I don't know. I don't know what to think about the Patriots.
They're very unpredictable. But again, Bill O'Brien gives them the chance to kind of elevate Mac, and you might see a year 3 leap from Mac Jones. I mean, Tua had a bit of a year 3 leap. You've seen it with Josh Allen. It's not irrational to say that he could be unlocked this year. I just, are you betting on that is really the question.
Yeah, I think it's a situation where even if they play better than they did last year, which I think you can expect on offense, my suspicion is that the rest of the division got so much better that they're not going to win more games. I think they're going to finish right in mediocrity, which is going to be fascinating because Belichick is 19 wins away from Don Shula's all-time wins record. And that's what Belichick wants, is to be the winningest coach of all time. I would think. So then it's an awkward situation because if he's only won 9 or 8 games, and the division remains competitive because Rodgers is probably going to play in 24 as well. Then what do the Patriots do, right? Then what does Bill Belichick do? He's got, I think, currently the most salary cap space in the NFL next year. So, does he spend like it's 2021, I think was the year, or 2020, when he paid for Judon and he paid for Jonnu Smith and he paid for Jalen Mills and Hunter Henry, Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, the list goes on. I kind of think maybe we'll see a really big spend next year from the Patriots. We'll see a mediocre year this year, probably missing the playoffs, and then a really, really aggressive offseason next year.
Here's the question, though. If the Patriots have a season like last season where just scraping by or worse, does Belichick make it out? Because there have been kind of rumblings that, Robert Kraft could be looking to finally kind of cut the cord, because Robert Kraft is a prideful guy. We know it. We've seen it. He's flashy. He's very similar, cut from the same cloth as Jerry Jones. They don't want to made to look like fools. There was only so long, and I'm not comparing Jason Garrett to Bill Belichick, but Jerry Jones let Jason Garrett kind of hang around for far too long. I wonder how long, Belichick has. I get the lineage of everything he went through and all the championships he brought to New England, but that stuff becomes a distant memory when the losing starts becoming a prevailing factor. So,
well, the funny thing is he's not even really losing yet, truly, right? Like, he is actually 25-25. It's just that we are so accustomed to see Bill Belichick competing for Super Bowls that we are like, he's losing games. It's like, well, yeah, but he's winning as many as he loses. So is he really? I mean, it is like, Jeff Fishering is not like where a franchise wants to be. But I think if you're Bill Belichick, you can Jeff Fisher your way to retirement for the next 2 or 3 seasons, get Don Shula's record, and then Kraft lets you exit gracefully, and the relationship is, cozy. But you're right. If the Patriots win just 4 games, 5 games, then we are absolutely then you're right. Then it's a losing team, and Robert Kraft can make some potentially aggressive decisions to move on from Belichick, is what we're really talking about here.
I like the term Jeff Fishering used as a verb.
Yeah.
I thought that was it's a great term for like 8 and 8. Well, I'm sorry, like 8 and 9, 9 and 8
Yeah.
now.
Right.
Basically, Billsing of the mid 2000s being nothing better than 7 and 9 or 6 and 10. That being said, let's move on to the next team in line, the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins just recently, as of today, and we're hearing more about this Jonathan Taylor stuff. We're in the mix for Jonathan Taylor or every single running back ever. The Jalen Ramsey news, which is huge. That was their big ticket, off-season addition. And then really a team of a lot of very talented guys that without Tua are just a bunch of talented guys. So, Henry, why don't you start us off? What are your thoughts about the Miami Dolphins heading into the season? And what are your speculations or your feelings?
Yeah, I really like the Dolphins this year, if I'm being honest. I think like I have one lingering doubt, which is actually not necessarily about Tua's health, but it's more about whether or not McDaniel, can adapt well enough. It did feel like some of McDaniel's shortcomings as a play caller, as a play designer, actually got masked by the concussion conversations surrounding Miami. And like Tua was not operating as high a level in the second half of the season. And there are legitimate concerns that was connected to his concussions. But then there's also the question of whether the system was setting him up to succeed in the same way, because we know that's the kind of quarterback that Tua ultimately is. It's not like Josh Allen where he, is superlative. It is a game manager, and so Tua needs help. And I'm wondering if McDaniel can sustain that high level of success with a little more defensive game planning adversity. That said, and sort of like putting that into like putting the doubt in first, I can move on to sort of the optimism around this team, which is, their skill players, even without Jonathan Taylor, are we saw last year, are sort of insanely good. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, even with all of these injuries and to Tua, and even with the systemic problems that were happening in Miami, like those two guys were in the top 10 in receiving yards at the end of the year. And so the truth of the matter is that Jonathan Taylor would have made this offense really, really good and definitely better. But ultimately, do we really think that Mike McDaniel cares about calling running plays? That guy could not be like coerced into running the ball more often. He even told at the end of games all the time, he'd be like, I really could have like stuck with the run a little bit longer that game. And then the next game he throws it, 70% of the play calls. So would have loved to see Jonathan Taylor get free of Indianapolis, which has badly mistreated him. Would have loved to see him get paid like a top tier running back, which he deserves, and all the running backs in the league deserve. But yeah, this Miami team is good. And the one thing, we get so wrapped up, or I'll speak for myself, I'm getting all wrapped up about this offense, which we already know is pretty darn good. Actually, the defense is, I should have probably led as the storyline. Vic Fangio is their defensive coordinator. That is, as far as names go, he hasn't been Bill Belichick, but on the defensive side of the ball, from like a coordinator standpoint, he is respected up there as one of the defensive minds of this generation of coaches like Bill Belichick. So for them to add a coordinator on that side of the ball, Bills fans know how frustrating defensive play calling can be when it comes up short. And that's really, I think, how the Dolphins felt all year last year, was a shortcoming on the defensive staff. So that's a massive upgrade for them, sort of like New England replacing, their incompetent offensive leadership. Miami is doing something very similar, where they've got this offensive-minded head coach, Mike McDaniel, Bill Belichick. They each lead their side. They need like an equal and successful coordinator to sort of be the yin to the yang. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, well, I think if you're a Dolphins fan, objectively speaking, because I really do try to see every team and the improvements they've made, it's hard not to be optimistic, really, because you're going into this season with what was already a good very, very good, elite, even receiving core. You have great running backs. Your defensive line is nasty. There's great members of your secondary. Obviously, some injuries have seemed to kind of slow. I don't even know if slow down is the right word, but definitely have an effect on the outlook of how the defense will function. Vic Fangio is a fantastic defensive mind and has had success in the past. My question mark for the Miami defense isn't asking if it'll be any good. I think it will be. How long will the transition take for this defense to actually get comfortable with a new coach that's not as pressure-minded? Because with Josh Boyer, they were a pressure-minded defense, right? They were blitzing a lot of the time. They had a lot of talent based on pressure. It feels to me that this year, I don't know how often they're going to do so. And if that's the case, is there going to be any growing pains with maybe some players that might have to be in coverage a bit more often with new assignments, new terms, like a new playbook for this defense? And I don't know. And that could be a situation where week one, they're ready to go and they're one of the best defenses in the league, or there could be some growing pains from going from such a different style of defense. Where I think the Jonathan Taylor conversation is interesting is Jeff Wilson was just placed on IR today. So I think what it sounded like to me is that they really wanted to just shore up that room with an elite back, and maybe just from my perspective alone, indicative of them trying to have a real proven elite running back. Because don't get me wrong, Mostert, Wilson, I think A-Chain as well, are all very good or going to be very good backs, but Jonathan Taylor is a top 5 back. If you include him in your offense, I think what this allows you to do is take the ball out of Tua's hands so he's not in as many positions where he could potentially reconcuss himself, and then you could still have a very competitive, viable offense that's very run heavy. So I think I'm thankful that they didn't get Taylor as a Bills fan, but they're going to be very good offensively. That's not the question. They were on track to really give the Bills a run for first place last year before the injuries. My question is the second half Miami team going to be what we see again this season, or is it going to have adjustments made from that? And is the defense going to have a slow transition, or are they going to be ready to go by week one? It's going to be interesting to watch.
Right. And the big thing is with the Dolphins, and we know this, and it's really like any team, and I think Steve mentioned this perfectly. He said it's all about in the division and, how close it could be is injuries. We saw what happened to the Buffalo Bills last year. I think a lot of what their season or their downfall was just the litany of injuries that they went through. The Dolphins are they are basically a winning team or a bad team based on Tua. And it just comes down to what he can do. They're an unbelievably talented team. I think they've got a litany of different, very talented options. Their wide receiving core is quite ridiculous, except for the chosen one who was not chosen. They have so many different pieces that they can kind of turn to in a moment's notice and be exceptional. They could be a team with a ton of speed, which in today's NFL, speed kills. It's going to make this team that much better, especially when you're playing in that Miami Heat. The question is can they withstand an entire season, which we've yet to be able to see? And quite frankly, not that anybody's number 2 is any good. They've got Mike White and Skylar Thompson. Mike White was serviceable. I'm not going to, bash on the guy. When he played against us, he had his moments of clarity where he looked really, really good. I like what you guys have said. I think there's some serious question marks and there's some big positives. When it comes to Vic Fangio, we know he's an unbelievable defensive mind. Josh Allen has also proven to be able to play against the Vic Fangio defense. Josh Allen and his ability to kind of create outside of the pocket to, under duress, excel more than he does in the pocket, makes a Vic Fangio defense kind of suspect. We saw when he played against the Broncos both times, Josh Allen kind of shredded that team. And then, quite frankly, their secondary is not good. And when Josh Allen knows that the secondary is not good, he is going to find every way to exploit it. There is more weapons on this Bills team now. But the other part about this is, and like we've talked about with Patriots, I think the big question mark is the AFC. With the AFC, the talent is so, it's unbelievable. This might be the best AFC that we've ever seen in the history of the NFL. The amount of teams that have the chance to be the team to, run for the AFC in the Super Bowl, it could be anybody. I mean, there's probably like 8 or 9 teams this year. So I think the big question mark with a team like Miami, who has some deficiencies, and though specifically they may not, they're only going to have Ramsey out potentially 4 weeks. Those 4 weeks could make or break. I mean, we're talking about the Bills potentially only being 12-5 this year, right? Or being 11-6 because of their schedules. The Dolphins also have a very tough schedule. I think there's big question marks there. Moving on, we are going to be going into the New York Jets, the team that we're going to be playing just over a week from today in New Jersey on September 11th. A team that, man, big news this season with Aaron Rodgers coming in off of his darkness retreat. Joe, why don't you start us off about the New York Jets? What are your thoughts about the Jets going into this season, and how are you feeling about them?
Well, I'll say this. I was skeptical about everything when I was first hearing about Aaron Rodgers. It's similar to my thought or my mindset with Tua, which is health, because each of the last for each of them over the last season, there's been an injury concern that's hampered their play, right? So with Tua, it's his concussions keeping him out of games. Aaron Rodgers got a little banged up, and also combined that with the receiving core he wasn't really familiar with. And you saw a really, really big regression in his play, one that almost seemed unprecedented. So that's the question mark when it comes to Aaron Rodgers was that just a once in a, blue moon kind of blip on his resume, or is this the beginning of a decline? I would bet on it just really being a blip. I've defended him before he went to the Jets about his play and thinking that it would come to fruition. So with him and a healthy Aaron Rodgers, they're going to be tough. There's just no other way to spin it. When you look at their roster, it's a lot of young talent, defensively especially, where you have to wonder if they're just going to replicate as how good they were as a defense like they were last season. And I spoke to Aaron Schatz about it, and one of the things he had mentioned is they were historically healthy and that they were due for a regression. My one thing is that might be true, but also with how much young talent is on that defensive side of the ball, I really wonder if that's going to be the case or if we're going to see them play. Because if they are all fully healthy, it's going to be a very tough defense to play against. And they are one that seems to, at full strength, have Allen's number in a way where they keep him guessing. Now, the Bills' offense will look different against them, but it's still something I'm concerned about. But where I think the Jets don't exactly scare me too much is their receiving room. And it's not because it doesn't have talent. Like, again, Garrett Wilson is one of the best young receivers in the league. He could be a top 5 receiver this year. Allen Lazard is serviceable. Cobb is okay. He might be a little old. Mecole Hardman is a deep threat. Like there's potential there, especially when you have Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook added to their running back room, for me to say that we should respect this team and understand that on paper, they're a very formidable team. Where I wonder is, are they going to actually turn it around from being a 7-win team to a winning record team? And are they going to be able to dethrone the AFC East champs all in the turn of a year? Because when you looked at the Bills, their rise to the AFC East top was progressive, right? So you had your down year with Josh Allen's rookie year. You get to 2019, they win 11 games. And then obviously they ascend forward 13 wins, 11 wins, 13 wins. The Jets, if I was a betting man, would say I think they'll have a winning record. I think they'll be a playoff team. But when it comes to competing in a very difficult AFC East with a lot of young guys, I wonder if they could be the team to dethrone. And I just don't know if that'll be the case.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, for the most part, I've been thinking of the Bills as the team that's going to finish atop this division. I think the Jets are a more dangerous playoff team potentially. Like I could see them, it really does come down to health probably, but I could see them being the more dangerous team come January and maybe even February. But I think you made a lot of really good points. Like the injury regression for this team, it doesn't scare me as much, except for the 2 positions you named. Receiver as one of them. Cornerback is actually the other position that is surprisingly shallow when you take a peek at it. They've got an amazing top 3. Obviously, Sauce, DJ Reed, Michael Carter. I believe he's Michael Carter the second, the cornerback. And he is that's a great top 3. Beyond that, I think Bryce Huff or yes. We can pull it up later. Bryce Huff is their defensive end. Has the CB4 spot. So basically, you're looking at a massive fall off. An injury could create problems, I would say. And I think like Robert Saleh probably thinks, well, my defensive line can make up for it. And the answer is sort of yes and no. I think that defensive line is where they're equipped to withstand multiple injuries. I mean, they are preposterously deep in their front seven. So as far as the Jets go in terms of Aaron Rodgers on the offensive side of the ball, and you pointed out the shortcomings at receiver, I do actually think that they might acquire a receiver over the course of the year. Devontae Adams is a guy that is already rumored to being discontent and wanting out there. Give him 6 games, give him 4 losses, and all of a sudden things are going to start to come unchained in Las Vegas. I hate to say that about Josh McDaniels, who, I reported on for many years and is a great guy, terrific coach. But it's distinctly possible that seat gets hot fast, and that it's possible that they might need to move on from Devontae Adams. But there are other receivers that might pop free on bad teams. Honestly, I wonder like how good the Commanders will be. It feels like they'd never deal Terry McLaurin, but like maybe that could be a possibility at some point. But in any case, like some star receiver will become discontent. A contractual thing will come to a head, and maybe the Jets are a team that buys at the last second someone to complement Garrett Wilson. But man, I think Garrett Wilson is going to have an insane production level for this offense. He looked so good last year, and the one thing I worry about with them is them getting in their own way a little bit. The Jets have been a laughing stock for quite some time. You think about dream teams, you think about just how much pressure is on this team to succeed, whether it's Hard Knocks, whether it's Aaron Rodgers, bringing the championship mentality, the championship verbiage. I mean, I remember last year, the Bills were doing this. They were constantly telling everyone that they were Super Bowl or bust. And then it created this really intense atmosphere, both before and after they didn't win the Super Bowl, right? Like things really blew up and got extremely emotional. And by broadcasting these ambitions beyond the meeting rooms, which I think is healthy to talk about in the meeting rooms, but by creating this intensity, this fervor beyond the facility, it can create pressures that balloon out of control for a team. And I worry the Jets being so young, whether that's something that they can manage, especially late in the season.
The Bills, the Cowboys, the Patriots, the Chiefs, the Broncos, and the Eagles. Those teams are the first 6 opponents for the New York Jets.
Yeah. I know. I was looking at that slate, and they could easily go like 2-4, right?
And that's where you're talking, where, does this team have, and I don't want to bring up the Bills. It's a Bills show, so I guess whatever. But
bring up the Bills that's why your fans are here.
The Bills are a team that, if you listen to Christian Kirksey today, he said part of the reason he came here was the defensive core has been here for almost 7 years. That's a team that can withstand early punishment, early losses, bad moments like the Hail Murray, right? Where they came out of the Hail Murray and they were successful. And I think they strung 8 wins together after that point. This is a test of how good this team is. We've seen Aaron Rodgers out of the gate has not always been good. He's a 50-50 quarterback right out of the gate. And when it comes to the New York media, we know the New York media can be incredibly difficult, but this is a test, because when you come out, and we just talked about this with the Dolphins and the Patriots, if you don't come out hot, your odds of making the playoffs dramatically drop, whether it's this year or any year, but this year even more with the amount of teams that are as talented as they could potentially be in the AFC. And obviously there's going to be some ebbs and flows. We know some teams won't be as good as we thought. They still need to step up and, get going quickly. And when you're playing the Bills, the Cowboys, obviously the Patriots are a question mark, but the Chiefs, Broncos, Eagles, and then you can even go beyond that. The Giants, the Chargers, the Raiders. There's a lot of big time games of big question marks. I like what the Jets are. I like their team. Henry, you spoke it perfectly. Their defensive front seven is ridiculous. They might have one of the most impressive defensive lines I think I've ever seen. And there's been some very good ones in the past, but if you look who they have, whether it's John Franklin Myers or Quinnen Williams or Bryce Hoff or Quentin Jefferson, who has been sneaky good for a long time, they have so much talent, and they're going to be rotating that defensive line under Robert Saleh's auspice. There's a lot that they can do, and that doesn't even include their secondary. No, again, I agree. We've seen, who knows if they're going to give Sauce Gardner the same benefit. Joe, we've talked about this. We don't know if they're going to allow him to, I know Jets fans think it's weird. The dude was very, very high proponent of holding onto jerseys, getting a little aggressive at the point of, at the catch point. Will they allow that to continue, or will they give him, a little bit more flagging this year? DJ Reed, does he follow up last year's incredible performance and do it again this year? He was great in Seattle. Can he do it again 2 years in a row for the Jets? That safety tandem is it's a big question mark for the Jets. There's just a lot that I question in regards. I love the defense, but there's some question marks as well. We know if there's issues on the back end, doesn't matter how good your front seven is, it could be a massive issue. And then on the offense, I love Garrett, but again, we still need to see him repeat it in year 2 with Aaron Rodgers. We don't know what Aaron Rodgers is going to look like. We know that wide receiver core, if Garrett Wilson goes down, that wide receiver core is a mess. They've got a couple good pieces, but it's like it's like the Bills. If Stephon Diggs goes down, they go from like top 5 to bottom 20. And it's the same thing for the Jets. If Garrett Wilson goes down, I think they're in a big issue. And then we haven't even talked about Breece Hall. Breece Hall, we don't even know what he's going to be this year. We don't know what Dalvin Cook is going to be this year. There's so many question marks in regards to the New York Jets. I think they've got a ton of talent. But again, like I said, with those first 6 games, can they come out hot? Can they reset if they, get behind the 8 ball and start 0-2, which is entirely possible? Would they come back out and win against the Patriots in week 3 at home? I think there's just a ton of question marks. And then, guys, let's follow it up. Last one, obviously the Buffalo Bills. Henry, I know what Joe and I think. What are your thoughts on the Buffalo Bills going to this year? And then we'll finish it up with everybody's thoughts as to the AFC and the standings.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what Ken Dorsey does in year 2 as the offensive coordinator. You see little things happening on that, with those offensive skill players that makes me think that this is going to be a really high octane, high efficiency offense. Dalton Kincaid and James Cook becoming feature players in the offense. You think maybe there's an opportunity for Josh Allen to make really good use of the, -2 behind the yard of scrimmage to the 10-yard line, which was it was a huge, I think it's almost like Josh Allen saw people making fun of quarterbacks like Mac Jones and Zach Wilson throwing only within the first 10 yards. And everyone's like, look at the spray chart. What an embarrassment. And so Josh was like, all right, cool. Me and Ken, we're just going to throw past the sticks every single play. And obviously that's a radical overestimation of what was actually happening. But it was sort of caricature-y in that their offense became so run and gun, so aggressive that there was okay, take a breath. There is an intermediate game. There is a quick game that can really open up this offense and help Stephon Diggs, be a more efficient target rather than the final playoff game where I forget exactly what the target to reception ratio, but it was something 11 targets to 6 catches or something like that. Not a super efficient situation for Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, and not a super happy Stephon Diggs at the end of the game. So you start to use Dalton Kincaid, probably not so much at the beginning of the season, because, I do think the Bills will actually slow play him a little bit, even though fans sort of reject that idea. I think Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, they have their way of bringing in rookies, and it is, even when they're capable of more, they still bring them slow. But James Cook is going to, I think, come in hard and fast with his usage. He's going to be a big part of this offense. When you hit the red zone, they're probably going to switch over a little bit to Damian Harris, get a little power, see if they can't bruise the defense a little bit, beat it up. So it has the potential to have a slightly different identity. I wonder how long it can last. It's like such a good idea that Ken Dorsey evolves, that Josh Allen is willing to check the ball down. But like, does it actually happen? And do we see it happen for 17 regular season games? Because there were times last year where it looked like the Bills were evolving offensively, like they were willing to be more like to use the whole field. And then they would go back to feeding the ball to Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen leading the team in rushing. And I think like they can't, in my opinion, they can't keep doing that.
Yeah. So to elaborate on kind of how they became one-dimensional too, there's a few factors. One of them was they were able to run, but it did feel like they did want to rely a bit more on Josh throwing. And he's a all-pro, top quarterback in the league. Of course, you're going to put the ball in his hands. There were times where they actually dictated games with the run, like against the Patriots in Foxborough, but they seemed to get away from that in later games. But there was the problem of poor interior blocking that kind of led to them straying away from it too, because they only ran against light boxes. When there was a stack box, it was very seldom they actually ran it. But Josh Allen's elbow injury also affected his middle of the field accuracy too. When you looked at them playing the Vikings, that pretty much that stretch of the Midwest where they had to play the Vikings, the Lions, the Browns, these teams, he just wasn't accurate there. And it was hard because he just couldn't get the angle comfortably to throw there. So it was really just, I can throw out, I can throw deep. I have more success with that. But yeah, I think not even a homering prediction. I know this is a Bills show. We're Bills fans, but my objective prediction is that it's going to be the most efficient offense in the league. And why I think that is because they've added the groupings in the offensive line, in the receiver room, in the tight end room to kind of quell the one issue they've had for so many years, which was yards after catch. So 2020, I think, was an example of that offense you're talking about, Henry, where you want to see them kind of utilize the whole field. It can be deep, but it could also be efficient and methodical. They've done that before. And if you recall, that was Josh Allen's highest completion percentage ever. He was an MVP candidate. It was objectively his best year of his career. I think you're going to see that. And the reason I think it isn't just for blind optimism. So when you look at your offensive line, you have shored up the interior, adding in Connor McGovern, adding in the rookie Osiris Torrance, who looks very promising, but making Ryan Bates' depth to kind of fill in on the line. Spencer Brown is a question mark. However, when you add in these middle of the field options or short options like you alluded to, so James Cook out of the backfield for pass catching or running, you add in Deontay Hardy, you add in Trent Sherfield as a proven slot option. Obviously, Dalton Kincaid could be very good. You're not only allowing your offensive line to thrive because you're holding the ball for less time, but you're also giving defenses fits in coverage because you have multiple guys that are capable of getting open in space if they throw it at you or even in man-to-man situations. So why I think that's important is because these guys are also able to move after they get the ball. I mean, Dalton Kincaid had great yak numbers in college. Deontay Hardy has great yak numbers. Like, these are things that can really bolster the Bills offense as a whole. But now you're adding this kind of new philosophy as well as a new reliance on 12 personnel in addition to what was already one of the most explosive offenses in the league. Because even when we talk about them going one-dimensional, they were a top 3 DVOA offense. Like top 5. That is still impressive given what they had to go through. So for me, I know it's optimistic and things can go wrong and health matters. I've knocked on wood multiple times in the show. I'm actually going to do it again real fast, but I truly believe that it's going to be a metamorphosis for the offense. And what you saw in 2020 is really a similar, if not better example. And I haven't even talked about running.
Yeah. If you look at the Buffalo Bills this year, I think what they're going to do, and you saw this in the first 2 weeks last year against the Rams and the Titans, they're going to get back to what they did best. When Cole Beasley, and I've mentioned this a million times, I feel like I'm just regurgitating the same facts over and over. We lost 183 receptions with Cole Beasley when he left. And what Cole Beasley provided is the ability that kind of death by 1,000 cuts, matriculate down the field, all the ridiculous cliches that I can throw out there. But it made for a Bills team that made defenses have to be honest. It made the secondary have to be honest because they knew that when you were playing over the middle against the Buffalo Bills, they could destroy you. Because it wasn't just Beasley, it was Stephon Diggs, Dawson Knox. You had a amalgamation of so many different options that they didn't know how to cover the Bills. And then on top of it, you had to worry about Josh Allen leaving the pocket running for 30 yards. Now, what you go back to, because we had those injuries last year, you have Stephon Diggs, you have Gabe Davis. Those could be your boundary receivers, but you also have Trent Sherfield and Deontay Hardy. And we've already mentioned Dalton Kincaid, who is like a giant slot receiver. And that doesn't even include Dawson Knox or James Cook or Damian Harris and Latavius Murray. What the Bills have become is not just a one-dimensional offense like they were at the end of last season because of the injuries to Josh Allen, because of what they didn't have. They have now become one of the deepest offenses on paper. Now, obviously, it is on paper, and until they prove it week in, week out, they are just that. But if Josh Allen, and I mentioned this, to a couple different people, but if Josh Allen is able to continue his ascension and not revert back to his bad mechanics, because we saw a little bit of that last year with his arm injury, but we've seen time and again that Josh Allen can sometimes have his moments where he either becomes Sugar Rush Josh or he makes those bad mechanical errors. If Josh Allen can continue his ascension with the talent, which is now the best he's had in his career, this could be a jumping off point for Josh Allen to truly cement himself as one of the greats. A guy that can finally take this team over the hump, because we've seen it, right? We've seen Josh Allen in the moments of that 13 seconds Chiefs game where he propelled this team. Had everything else gone right, the Bills were probably in the Super Bowl. At least that in my assumption, based on one of the hottest teams in the NFL history. They were looking at a team that you just couldn't beat. If Josh Allen can continue that ascension, if he can continue those type of trajectories, this team is going to be dangerous. And that doesn't even include the defense. I think this defense, under the care of Sean McDermott, who is a fantastic defensive coordinator, if you don't think so, go look at his days in Carolina. They've added more to this team. Obviously, there's question marks at middle linebacker, though Christian Kirksey was brought in, and I wouldn't be surprised by week 4 or 5 if Christian Kirksey is your starting middle linebacker. But they have a ton of talent. This is the first year that we could potentially see Von Miller, Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, and Micah Hyde on the field at the same time. That's big. We're going to see the ascension of a Greg Rousseau, who is now continually getting better and better. Kingsley Jonathan, who apparently is, to Steve Tasker, the next great thing. There's so much talent on this Bills team. This team that could be the next great team. But again, like everything else, like the other teams in the AFC, it comes down to they got to start hot. They're going to continue being hot. They got to play 60 minutes every single game, and they have to be able to withstand those injuries. I think this is a Bills team that could set records. I think, just like Joe just said, I think this is a team that could kind of usurp that 2020-21 team where they were breaking all sorts of records. They just have a lot going on, and I think I see this team really taking the AFC. People keep looking at this team as only winning 11 or winning 12. I don't see that. I think this Bills team can win 14 games. I think this team could be the class of the AFC. And then the AFC East is just kind of all just chasing them all year long. What are your thoughts in regards to the division, who wins it and how the rest of it looks real quick?
Yeah, I think the Bills win it, but I don't think I'm as optimistic as you are in total wins. Like, I think they might still be actually the class of the AFC when the regular season ends, but I could easily see them winning the AFCs with like 11 wins or something, just given how competitive it's going to be. There's going to be a lot of beating each other, and that will lower everyone's aggregate record. The one thing I'll flag, just because I get to be the bad guy a little bit when I come onto a Bills radio station, is I'm curious to watch how Sean McDermott calling defensive plays, running the defense, game planning for the defense, being the defensive coordinator, how does that impact his game management? And is he able to sort of outsource that job a little bit more to someone else? Or what does he end up doing? Can he do both? And I think that's something to monitor early in the season, is how well can he handle that role? How sharply is he making decisions in late game situations? And are those decisions winning games for the Bills? Because there's going to be a lot of close games. There's going to be a lot of hard decisions to make. And I think Sean McDermott, ultimately, if he's running a defense and trying to think about what's next for that unit, he might not be used to this much responsibility. There is really only one coach, I think, in the NFL right now that is a pure coordinator along with being a head coach.
Mr. Andy Reid himself. Yeah. I mean, with Bobby Babbitt, Sean Butler, Al Holcomb, and quite frankly, the rest of the staff, I think Sean McDermott has done a good job of surrounding himself or insulating himself with enough key players that, with game day decision-making or game day processes, I think he's got a good staff that will make things pretty seamless. And, like anything, I mean, we've seen this with Andy Reid. Andy Reid was not good in time management early in his career. And as Sean McDermott has gone through his time in Buffalo going into year 7, he really wasn't great either, but now he's gotten a lot better. I think having those guys to lean on is going to be huge. Joe, thoughts?
So I'll wrap up my thoughts for the division. It would be too obvious if I said that the Bills will win it. So instead, I'm going to say there's a 4-way tie that comes down to multiple coin flips, but the Bills somehow win it. No, my questions for each team. So I'll get to the overarching one because all of these teams share a common denominator. But for the Buffalo Bills, Sean McDermott question is very valid. That has been brought up many times by people. I'm curious to see it too. He's had a great track record as a DC in Carolina, but yes, it's different when you're calling plays and managing the clock. It's a different beast, a totally different environment with a lot more pressure. I think having some assistance in there can help, but ultimately, is he designating that role to someone? Is he fronting the role? Because if he's fronting the role, that's a lot to take on. It can be very stressful, especially with a very difficult season ahead of them. So perfectly valid. My question for them, though, is their defense going to be healthy? Is the D-line going to be healthy? Because last season, there was very much just an unfortunate turn of luck with their defense. Vaughn, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, all of their key starters got hurt at some point or were out to start the year. Are they going to be healthy? Because here's the thing. If that D-line goes down again, this operation might not be successful, and it's going to be problematic. So health is my question. For the Jets, Thomas, you alluded to the early schedule. That's my question. Is your chemistry going to click right away when you face an immediate slate of tough games? And is it really going to be a matter of if you start 2-4 or heaven forbid 1-5, are you going to crumble or are you going to rise up and actually turn it on in the second half? Because the Jets schedule gets much easier. For the Dolphins, it's Tua. Listen, I don't want to say, because it's very easy to say, oh, player got hurt last year, player might get hurt this year, but concussions are a different beast, and you are more likely to get another concussion if you have a repeated history of them, which Tua had 2 last season. That's very concerning. So is that going to be a problem this year? How does Mike McDaniel adjust this offense to keep Tua out of harm's way? Is that even possible? Because if he goes down, well, people like Mike White, I'm not optimistic about Mike White. He's a backup for a reason. I just don't see it being the same level of success. And then for the Patriots, how is Bill O'Brien going to make Mac Jones look? Are we going to see development and a step forward that really evolves the Patriots? Or is Mac Jones just a Kirk Cousins clone in the AFC that just doesn't really elevate you to a level that is championship caliber? And that's to be seen, but Bill O'Brien's the right offensive mind to give. But for me, the overarching thing that I wrote down with the giant bracket is offensive line, because if you looked at the chart, each of these offensive lines go from number 20 to number 24 as far as rankings going into the year. They all have question marks. They are all very thin, as most offensive lines are, and they all could make or break the success of every offense in this division. For the Bills, is Spencer Brown your guy? Is he going to last you a whole year? Is the back going to be a problem? Does he take that step forward, and can you mask it? For the Jets, I'll ask you that same question for Mekhi Becton, who is an all-world talent who hasn't been able to stay on the field, as well as some other average to good players around him. But then there's Vera Tucker, who's very good. I got to give him his flowers, and potentially Joe Tittman. Miami, it's the same question. they have injury concerns as well. And then the Patriots, it's the same problem. So I really think when you ultimately talk about the final, and this will be my final point, final AFC East, the winner of it, it's going to come down to line play, man. The trenches. If the offensive line for the Bills is healthier than other teams, that's a huge difference maker. And I think that can make or break success, especially for some of these young teams that haven't really gelled yet.
Yeah, when it comes down to it, this AFC East, excuse me, could be a bloodbath for all we know. The three teams, the Jets, Dolphins, and Bills, and for all we know, maybe Mac Jones has, ascension off of his rookie year with the care of Bill O'Brien, being able to provide him a true offensive identity. With the Jets and the Dolphins, we know that if all things click, those two teams could be dangerous, and they could knock on the door of, taking that kind of proverbial, king of the hill seat from the Bills. I think the Bills are the class of the AFC East until otherwise, and their roster really says nothing otherwise. I think they have a talented enough team to be able to continue what they've done the last couple of years. I think the big part right now is it now becomes a point of Josh Allen and Sean McDermott solidifying their legacies. They need to get over this point of just being a good team or a great team and being able to take it to the next level, because otherwise they are Phillip Rivers and the San Diego Chargers. They are all the teams in the NFL history who were good, just not great, couldn't get it done. They're the Kirk Cousins of primetime. And so I think if the Bills can do it this year, I think it'll change the entire trajectory of this franchise. I think Josh Allen will then be playing at a different level going forward, but I think they just need to get past that point. Needless to say, by the way, before we get into the closing part of this, guys, make sure you're hitting the thumbs up. We do appreciate it. It is the lifeblood of all content creators. Make sure you're sharing this. If you enjoy this and you enjoyed this show, make sure you're sharing it with people you know. Tell somebody that you love. Be like, hey, go watch this stuff. Go watch Cover One. We do appreciate it. That being said, Joe, Henry, I truly appreciate you guys being on tonight. Let people know where they can find you.
Yes, so I am live every Saturday on all Cover One streaming platforms and our YouTube live show. I host Under Review Saturday at 11 a.m. And this weekend, I am joined by Mr. Bengals on the brain himself, Joe Goodberry, because we are doing a preview of the whole AFC together through the lenses of both of our teams. So you can find me there every Saturday morning, 11 a.m. With the season rolling in, I will be doing game previews with many different incomparable guests. So please come check me out every Saturday. Would love to have you there in the live chat. And Thomas, thank you for having me tonight. I appreciate it.
Yep, thanks for having me, Thomas. Bills fans, follow me at Henry C. McKenna on Twitter, and you can check me out on foxsports.com or the Fox Sports app. You can actually follow me. Beware of excellent reading on the Jets, Patriots, Dolphins, but of course, lots of good coverage of the Bills. I put up a story today on James Cook and why he is absolutely the RB1 and primed for a special year. So please read, please follow. I look forward to interacting with you all on Twitter.
Yeah, guys, again, make sure you're hitting them up with a follow. You can find me on Twitter at the Thomas DeLoss. You can find this show during the season and maybe going forward, who knows, at 7 p.m. every Thursday night on the Cover One Sports Network. I'm going to end it like I always end it, guys. One thing I want to say, and I was gone for a couple of weeks with my family, and it really gives you a little time to think about things and make you appreciate stuff. One thing I always do this, and my wife really loves this, is be kind. Be kind to each other. Life is far too short to not be kind. We obviously already saw with Damar Hamlin, him coming back, his journey to getting back to his dream job is happening again now. But aside from that, if there's somebody you haven't talked to in a long time, give them a call, tell them you love them. It means a lot. A lot of people need that call sometimes, and you don't even realize it can brighten someone's day. Or even if you're walking by, and as a mailman, I know this, say hello, smile, just give them a nod. It means a lot to people. Otherwise, guys, I truly do appreciate you checking out Buffalo Late Night here on the Cover One Sports Network. We will be here every Thursday night for more ridiculous stuff. Next Thursday, We got the opening game of the NFL season. Super exciting stuff. You'll see me next Thursday right before this game, 7 p.m. So make sure you join us as always. I appreciate you. I appreciate these two gentlemen. Guys, we'll see you next week. Go Bills.
The Bills make me wanna.